Hello everybody, thank you for coming back to my channel. Today I have a pretty exciting video to do. I normally do book reviews in this channel, but I have been wanting to do like crimes and unsolved mysteries here on my channel. I love to watch these types of videos, so I hope that you guys do too. I'm really excited for the case that I will be talking about today. We are going to be talking about the Oslo Plaza woman. So if you guys are not familiar with Unsolved Mysteries, it's this show on Netflix that touches on all these unsolved mysteries that have happened throughout the years. It's a show that's been going on for years. I've watched it so many times before, but it recently came out on Netflix and it's pretty good. So if you guys are interested in this case, stick around. We will be talking about it right now. So in May 31st, 1995, there was a woman who checked into the Oslo Plaza Hotel in Norway. The Oslo Plaza Hotel is described as a five-star hotel, super fancy, super luxurious, and the woman that checked into this hotel was going by the name of Jennifer Fairgate. 3 days after her checking in, the front receptionist at the hotel realized that they had not received any sort of payment for Jennifer's stay. They also had realized that there was no sort of ID on file for her, so she sent a security guard to go and check on Jennifer to get some of that information. So now the security guard went to Jennifer's room and realized that she had a do not disturb sign on her door. But because they had to gather that information, he went ahead and knocked on her door. The security guard described that he heard a really loud bang, which ended up being a gunshot coming from Jennifer's room. Now, it's very important to notice that the security guard had a two-way radio where he could call for backup or call for assistance. And instead of using that radio, he actually left the scene and went to go get his chief of security. Now, another thing that is important to know is that when Jennifer checked in, someone did state that they saw a guy with her, but they could not describe the gentleman and they didn't know what his name was. So then 15 minutes after the first security guard went to go call for backup, he came back with his chief security to get into Jennifer's room. And when they unlocked the doors, they realized that the doors were double locked, meaning that there was a extra lock on there that only security guards could unlock. And I believe it was only the chief of security could go in there and unlock, like he had a way to get in. When they unlocked the door, they realized that Jennifer was actually in her bed with a gunshot to her head. They stated that there was no signs of forced entry and that it looked like she was there by herself. Minutes later, when the cops arrived, they kind of looked more into what was really happening, and they realized that she had a gunshot wound to her forehead and that she was laying down. So her body was, her feet were dangling off the bed and the rest of her upper body was laying on the bed, and she was laying with the gun on her chest. So her thumb was on the trigger of the gun while her other four fingers were on the handle of the gun. They also noticed that she was actually clutching the gun against her chest and that there was no blood on her hand, on the gun, or on her clothes, but there was blood on the ceiling and on the bed. Investigators found a couple of things that were a little bit out of the ordinary in Jennifer's room. They found that she had no ID, no passport, no money, no debit cards, no credit cards. So that's of course a little odd, especially for someone that's traveling and staying in a hotel. I mean, you would think that someone that's traveling is going to have those sort of IDs, ID, some cash, or at least a card with them, but Jennifer had absolutely none of that. Another thing they realized was her clothing. So they stated that she had a couple of shirts, jackets, and a coat, I believe, but she only had the skirt she had on and no other pants. So no pants, no slacks, no other skirts. She only had one pair of clothing for her bottom half of her body, and I believe that she had two pajama pants or pajama shorts. The tags of her clothes were completely removed, so every piece of clothing she had with her, they had no tags, none of that was attached to her clothing. Now, some people think that this is very weird, which I agree. However, my mom removes all her tags from her clothing too because she says it bothers her. But what I found to be odd was the fact that her jackets, her coats, all of that stuff, it did not have any tags either, which I found to be kind of odd. Let me know what you guys think. They also found out that she had no toiletries with her, so she had no shampoo, none of that stuff, but there was a bottle of men's cologne with her. However, they did find out that it had her fingerprints on there. They also found out that there was a briefcase in the hotel room with 25 bullets in there. So literally nothing else was in this briefcase, just 25 bullets to a side, and they were just stashed in there as if she was saving them for something. There was also another bag that they found. I could not figure out what bag it was or what it came with or if it had anything in there, but they did state that there was some fingerprints that were lifted off of there, but they could not match them to anyone, and they did not match Jennifer either. So till this day, they do not know who those fingerprints belong to, which, I mean, okay, so when it comes to the investigation, the cops weren't really able to find much, honestly. I don't really know. There's a couple of things that kind of stand out to me when it comes to their investigation. So one of the things that they noticed was that when looking into her hotel room and the stuff she had with her, it looked like she was there alone. It didn't seem that she checked in with anyone. It didn't look like anybody was in there with her. All of her clothing belonged to her. No IDs, no money. Her clothes was missing the tags. All of those things do stand out, and they're kind of alarming. When they looked at Jennifer's check-in information, they realized that she had put her name as Jennifer Fairgate. Jennifer, when she checked in, she spelled Fairgate as an Fairgate. However, they realized that twice while she was in the hotel and she had to sign for something, she spelled her name incorrectly. I do believe that she spelled her last name Fergat twice while she was in the hotel, which is kind of odd. I mean, you're writing your name or you're signing your name. You would think that you know exactly how it's supposed to be spelled, but I don't know. She had also added her address and her phone number and her date of birth. Of course, when she checked in, she did not provide any sort of information, so they don't even know that information she provided is correct, but they assumed that it was not because the address that she provided was from Belgium. And when the police department in Norway reached out to the police department in Belgium, they let them know, you know, Jennifer Fairgate's dead. We think you guys should alarm her family. And when the Belgian police department went to the village that she had stated she was from, there was actually nobody that knew who she was, no family members. So they assumed that she pretty much just lied about where she was from. They did run her fingerprints on the database and nothing came back. They didn't find anybody that matched her fingerprints. So they didn't have any sort of clue of who this individual was. One of the things that does stand out to me was the fact that there was no sort of proof that the hotel cameras were checked ever. There was no, the police never commented on it. There was nowhere that stated that the cameras had been reviewed, even though this hotel had cameras. It was a 5-star hotel, yet it was the 90s, so I can understand the ID information. They weren't as strict as they are now, but the cameras, they had cameras and they were never checked, or at least if they were checked, they never were commented on, or they were never described on what exactly they found on those cameras. So that seems a little bit odd to me. The hotel worker did state that she had delivered some food to Jennifer's room, and that was actually the last time that anyone in the hotel actually saw her. It was just one plate, and again, just enough for one person, so it didn't seem like she ordered for more than one person. And the hotel worker does remember her because she said that Jennifer tipped her pretty well. So then we know, obviously, at that point that Jennifer did have some sort of... Another thing that they had pointed out was the fact that workers did see Jennifer with a pair of shoes. However, those pair of shoes were never found in the hotel or anywhere else. I'm not exactly sure how they realized that these shoes were missing or how they recognized those shoes if they stood out to someone, but the shoes that Jennifer had on when she passed away were not the shoes that other workers had seen her with. They had also stated that the clothes that they found in Jennifer's room, although of course they could not trace them anywhere, that they did reflect some German high-end clothing, so they kind of felt that the clothes were from Germany, if anything. Now, when they were investigating Jennifer's entry to her hotel room, they did pull out some time codes of when Jennifer was entering her room. They couldn't get any information of when Jennifer was leaving. I'm gonna look down on my notes because I don't have this memorized. But so Jennifer arrived on a Wednesday and she entered the room for the first time at 10:44 p.m. Then on Thursday, she entered the room at 12:21 a.m. And that same Thursday, she entered the room at 8:34 a.m. On Friday, she entered the room at 8:50 a.m. and then at 11:03 a.m. On Thursday at 1 p.m., the maids had actually gone into the room to clean. They had stated that the room was absolutely empty. There was actually nobody in there. There was no stuff in there. It seemed as if somebody that was in that room had already checked out, and they were probably cleaning for the next guest to come in. So again, the maids had arrived at 1 p.m., meaning that the room was pretty much empty from 1 p.m. to 11:03 a.m. That they know. So for that amount of time, they had no idea where Jennifer was. They didn't know where she was staying or what pretty much she was doing during those hours, which, I mean, how are you not going to check into your room till 11:03 a.m.? I don't know. That's odd. Another thing they had noticed was that Jennifer actually had used the phone in her room to call 2 different numbers that were not actually in service. They were not valid phone numbers. But that was really the only thing she did that they could trace from her room, was that she used her phone number or her phone in her hotel room to call these 2 numbers that were not valid numbers. And other than that, the cops literally had no other tips or leads on what to do. They did state that there was a 99.9% chance that this was an actual suicide of all the evidence and her DNA. And they pretty much, I don't know if they closed the case, but they pretty much stated that there was not much for them to follow. Nobody had claimed her. They had no idea who she was. So they ended up just burying her and closing the case as far as they were aware. So now there was an investigator by the name of Lars Christian Wagner. He ended up kind of looking into Jennifer's case, and he got very curious about what exactly was going on and who this individual. He ended up going to Verlaine, Belgium, where she had claimed that she was from. Verlaine is a small village in Belgium with a population of around 4,000. And he actually got help from another journalist by the name of Cedric Lacoste. And they pretty much just went around this village and asking people if they knew her. They took her sketch and they kind of were showing her sketch around, and they spoke to, for example, like a mayor, he was a mayor of that village who had been there, who was born and raised there. He knew everybody there, and he and a whole bunch of other people had absolutely no idea who she was. They did not recognize her. They were not aware of any sort of, like, they had no connection to her. So they pretty much just thought that she was not from there. So Jennifer had actually claimed that she was from a street called Rue de la Station and that her house number was number 148. However, when the journalists went to the street, they actually saw that the last house number was number 98. So her house number did not even exist. Another thing that they had realized was that Jennifer had provided a phone number that was very common in that area. So it had like the same area code phone number and all that information. So although they thought that she was not from that village, they pretty much thought that she had some sort of connection. I mean, she was pretty common. She knew it was a small village. So one of the things is that it's a small village. She knows a street from there. The phone number she provided was a number that was common in that area. So she had to have some sort of connection, even if she was not born or she was not from there. She had to know something about that village, unless she just Googled it, which, I mean, think about it. It's not like you can just go on your phone and Google it. It was the 90s. It's not that common back then. But I don't know. What do you guys think about why she connected herself to that village? I just have no idea of why she chose that village out of everything. This journalist ended up going to a kind of different investigators and kind of getting their ideas of, you know, what they thought about the weapon and what they thought about the crime scene. One of the things about the weapon that they were used was the fact that it was not really a weapon that was carried by a normal citizen. It wasn't really a weapon that people buy to protect themselves or their home or their loved ones. It was a weapon that was used highly by cops and detectives. So it's usually a weapon like an assault weapon. They pretty much described it as that. So it was very uncommon for just a regular individual to be carrying that weapon. However, that was a weapon that Jennifer was found with. And again, they found it so odd that there was absolutely no blood on her hands or on the weapon, and that the weapon was on her hand. A lot of the investigators that this journalist spoke to had stated that this weapon has so much force, it would have fell out of her hands. It would have left blood everywhere, or at least some sort of like if she shot herself, there should have been some sort of evidence attached to it, not just the fact that she was gripping the weapon and the bullet was on her forehead. Like there had to be blood or something. It should have fell out of her hand, just because of the fact that the weapon had so much force behind it. So this journalist actually had to get permission to pretty much dig up her grave and do a DNA test on her again, because all of that evidence had already been destroyed by the detectives from before. And they found out she was most likely from Germany. Now, some of the workers from the hotel had stated that she did speak with a Eastern German accent. So another thing is that when Jennifer checked in, she had actually put that she was 22 years old. But when they did DNA testing and they checked all of her, like they pretty much were able to check her age. She was most likely born in 1971, which made her 24 years old. So that was pretty much all the evidence they have on Jennifer. They don't really have much more to figure out who she really was. And now we're gonna move forward and talk about speculation. So who do you think she is? So Norwegian investigators pretty much just stated that she was just a woman who was depressed and probably suffering with something, some sort of depression, and that she pretty much just ran away from home and ran away from her family and committed suicide. There are a lot of things that I don't agree with here, just because nobody actually came forward. No, she didn't match any sort of missing people reports. They never really knew who she was. There was nobody that came forward and stated that they knew her or that she was missing, or she didn't match any of that. So she ran away from her family or she ran away from home. I think that somebody probably would have reported the fact that their family member was missing, but no one's came forward to claim her after all these years. So I feel like that's the easy way out for the investigators. And other people actually thought that she was some sort of human trafficking victim and was probably in sex work. This kind of does make sense to me. I do feel like one of the things is that she could have been a victim of human trafficking. And you know, human trafficking, they're huge and they have a lot of power. Unfortunately, we think that it doesn't exist in every country, but it does. And it could be the fact that they killed her and they were just trying to get rid of her, and there she was in bed, and the hotel probably covered it up. I mean, the cameras were never checked. The security guard left. She checked in without IDs. She didn't even pay for the hotel. So you never know. I mean, I just feel like, especially the odd hours, the hours that she was in and out of the hotel, I don't know, this one just makes sense to me. And I feel like that could be a possibility. So now, Norwegian intelligence officer Ola Kadager, I hope I said that name right. I pretty sure he did it. But he and so many other people believe that she was some sort of secret agent. Now, he did state that a lot of the things revolving around Jennifer's case pretty much match up to a secret agent who was executed. So one of the things he stated was the tags being removed from her clothing. That's very, very common with a secret agent. They do not want to be attached to anyone. They do not want to be traced to a certain location, a country, anything of that sort. She had no ID. Again, tracking. They don't want to be able to be found with anything if they are killed or executed. Normally, they do not have any sort of IDs attached to them. The other fact was the fact that she was gone for long hours of the hotel room. He says it's very common for a secret agent to actually have a second location. He had also stated that the doors being double locked, it's not a big deal. And the fact that maybe they thought no one was there or they weren't able to trace that anyone was there, that's not a big deal. For someone that's in a secret agent or some sort of intelligence service, they're trained for this type of stuff. They're trained to break into doors that are locked and highly sophisticated. These are things that they're trained to do. So the door being double locked or the fact that they weren't able to trace that anyone else was there, that's not uncommon for someone that has some sort of involvement with intelligence services or secret agents. And the other thing is the fact that no one has ever came forward to claim her. He also did say that someone that is in intelligence services goes missing or dies or gets executed, their family does get paid, and just to keep quiet, you know, their family could be pretty much keeping it low, not saying anything because of the fact that they're being taken care of for the rest of their life. So I don't know. I want to hear what you guys think. Comment below. Let me know what you guys think about this case. This is just a case that I was super intrigued by. Literally, when it came out on Unsolved Mysteries, I was like, no, I need to know exactly what's going on in this case. So yeah, let me know what you guys think. If there are any other cases you guys would like me to make a video on, comment them down below. And thank you guys so much for sticking around, and have a great day. Bye.